It's been said that we human beings are creatures of habit. And I think that's pretty much true. I think God made us that way. And we like familiar, we like routine, you know, and like it or not, we are creatures of habit. And that's a puzzle piece that we have to figure out what to do with. Habits are not so bad, really. Habits kind of save us time, save us energy. We don't have to kind of, think about everything. It's kind of like automatic pilot on an airplane. It saves you from having to make all the work and adjustments of doing the airplane, flying the airplane. The automatic pilot does it. And so when we get up and brush our teeth, we don't have to kind of think, okay, now how am I going to brush my teeth this morning? You know, we just do it automatically by habit, or drive a car, kind of the same thing, or, we just don't need to think about it. It saves us time, energy. And habits are pretty much unconscious, mainly, and we don't think about them too much until they cause us problems, until a certain habit causes problems. Like, if one my habit I have is coming home from work each night and couch surfing. Well, that might cause me some physical problems that I might want to kind of change. Might want to change that habit if it causes me enough problems. Or, going to a fast food place for lunch each day. That might be a habit which might not be as healthy as we'd like to be. Or, just grabbing my phone out of habit to check, you know, voicemail or email or Facebook, and wasting lots of time. Maybe that's a habit that causes problems sometimes. Habits are difficult to break. We all know that. Um, and we only attempt to change our habits if it's worth it to us, mainly if it causes us enough problems that we want to change it. That's usually when we start looking to, well, how do I change this habit? There are habits of doing, habits of things we do, but many people don't realize we have thinking habits. We have thoughts that we repeat over and over, and they become automatic. They are habits, just like any other habit. Thinking habits. We get used to repeating those certain thoughts. Especially thoughts about ourselves, who we are, what we're like, or about other people, who they are, who they're like. And we start repeating those thoughts. Now, those thoughts may or may not be true, you know, but we repeat them anyway. And if they're not true, if they're inaccurate, that's usually when they cause us problems. That's when they kind of get in the way. And we start thinking, well, what do I do with that thought? Can I change that? For example, say I make a mistake. Okay. My first thought might be, well, that's a failure. Then my second thought might be, well, I'm a failure. Well, that's a might be a habitual way of thinking, but that's not accurate. You know, just because we make mistakes doesn't make us a failure. That's just one example. Or, another thought about myself. Okay, I'm of value if I take care of people, if I'm there for people. Well, that's fine, except what happens when I get sick and can't do that? My thought might be, well, I'm useless. I'm no good because I'm sick and can't help people. Well, that's inaccurate too. It just being sick just means we're sick. It doesn't mean we're useless or whatever. Or another example is thoughts we have about other people. We have some people look at another person of another race or a person of another religion, and we think, that person is, and fill in the negative term that people use, whatever negative term that is. Now that's caused us lots of problems. That's kind of the definition of racism, of false thinking about other races, and that's caused us lots of problems. So if those ways of thinking about ourselves or others or whatever are problematic for us, if they cause us problems, maybe we're up for changing that thinking habit or those thinking habits of taking our thinking off of automatic pilot and kind of doing it manually a little bit. Maybe that's, would be worthwhile to us, might be helpful to us. Now, we all know how to change a habit. You look at what is the habit, what is it you're doing, and then you kind of look and say, well, how do I do it different? What's another possible way of doing it differently? And then you kind of repeat. You repeat doing it differently. And that's how you change a habit, very simply put. Um, Now, changing a thought habit is kind of the same way. It's kind of, you have to do the same things, only it's probably a little bit more challenging because we have to be more conscious, more focused, more mindful of how our mind works, of how what we're thinking, rather than just kind of a outward doing of something. What's actually going on in our head to identify that. So those are more challenging to break, those habits, thinking habits, but they can be done. There are kind of four pieces of that. One is, okay, what identifying the thought that is the habit. What is it? I'm a failure. Okay, well that's a thought. And then the second step is to kind of say, why isn't that accurate? To identify why that is not accurate. And that step might be, well, it's not accurate because everybody makes mistakes and not everybody is failure. So, that's why it's not accurate. And then identify an alternative thought, which I just did actually. Well, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody can't be a failure. So that's a thought to replace the old thought with. And then to practice it. Repeat it over and over again. Be aware of when you have that habitual thought, and then consciously say, no, I'm going to put this thought in there. No, I'm not a failure because everybody makes mistakes. And repeat it, and repeat it, and practice it, and practice it. That's why it's so difficult, because it takes a lot of practice. Practice makes perfect, however. We can get pretty good at something if we practice it. But a lot of those habitual thoughts we've had forever, we've had for years. And that's why it takes a while to undo them, to break that habit. That's why thinking habits are pretty challenging. And many people just give up because, well, it's too hard. It takes too much work. It takes too much practice and too much being conscious of what I'm thinking. And so it's not worth it. So many people give up. But we get good at what we practice. It's kind of like, if you write with your non-dominant hand, if you want to change hands, you consciously put the pencil in your non-dominant hand and start writing. And what's it look like? Awful. What's it feel like? Awful, uncomfortable, terrible. Can you read the writing? Well, not much. And it's slower. And yet, if you practice that, if you keep doing that, you can get pretty good at writing with your non-dominant hand. But we would do that only if it's worth it. Because that's a challenge. That's the challenge of habits. So we can get good at what we practice. So that is the secret, not such a secret, but the secret to changing habits. So here's wishing you lots of good luck in changing some of those habits, and maybe it'll make life a little bit better for you.